evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chapel Hill Carborough Board of Education 2025 Forum. I'm Erica Hayden with the Chapel Hill Carborough PTA Council, one of the organizations that helped plan and sponsor this forum, and I'd like to acknowledge the other organizations who helped with this event as well. Chapel Hill Carborough NAACP Branches Education Committee, Chapel Hill Carborough Association of Educators, League of Women Voters of Durham, Orange, and Chatham Counties, El Centro Hispanico, and Equity for Education. I would like to invite my fellow committee members to please stand up and receive a special thanks for their service. Some of them are outside too. Thank you. And we would also like to thank our candidates for their participation tonight. We really appreciate you joining us and addressing the concerns that are top of mind for our community. In addition, we would like to thank all of you for joining us tonight and to those who responded to the survey our committee created. We received 41 responses, and our groups worked together to review and select questions that get to the heart of what our community cares most about. Tonight's forum is being live streamed and recorded. If your question is not addressed this evening, you are welcome to reach out to the candidates directly. We also have Spanish translation services available here at the event. And last but not least, more gratitude for Aaron Keck, who has graciously offered to moderate our forum this evening. Aaron is the host of This Morning with Aaron Keck on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, keeping Chapel Hillians informed of the latest local news and music and chatting with our community's biggest movers and shakers. He was named North Carolina Radio Personality of the Year for 2021 and 2022 by the NC Association of Broadcasters. We are thrilled to have him here tonight to help us moderate this important event. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Erica, thanks to everyone who helped organize this event. I know that was a lot of people who came together to make this possible, and of course thanks to our three candidates who are here tonight. Super excited to be your moderator this evening. Before we jump in, just a quick reminder of what the Board of Education does in the first place. We're going to bring up a slide on what the Board of Education does, which I will not read in full, but just to give you a sense of what this school board does and what the three candidates who are sitting in front of you today are running in order to do. If you are interested in the election, which I assume you are if you're here tonight or watching or listening on the live stream, just to remind you about who can vote and when you can begin voting. So if we can pull that slide up. There it goes. Awesome. And with that, let's get started. A couple of ground rules. Candidates, please watch the clock and stay within your time limits. We've got a couple of timekeepers who are here to help you do that. Timekeepers, raise your hands. Or your cards, actually, more accurately. We've got a yellow card and we've got a red card. The yellow card will tell you when you have 30 seconds left. The red card will tell you to just stop altogether. And if you don't stop altogether, I will work in tandem with the red card holder and shame you until you do. Additionally, try your best not to use jargon. If you have acronyms that you're using, which invariably you will, just explain what the acronym stands for. Every candidate will get the opportunity to have an opening statement. We'll have some longer form questions, a few shorter format, speed round, lightning round questions, which are always my favorite, and then a closing statement. We'll switch the order in which you respond, and I'll let you know who goes first and second and third. And with that, we can begin for all of the candidates, and we'll just go left to right this time. So we'll start with George Griffin and go to Risa Jenkins and then Melinda Manning. Take 1 minute to introduce yourself and share why it is you are running for school board. 1 minute, beginning with George Griffin.
Thank you, Aaron, and good evening. I am a grandfather of 3 kids under age 8. They're here in the area. I'm a retired educator, teacher, taught at Phillips at one point back in the 90s. Some of you weren't even around. And have been a high school principal and have had 1 term on the school board. And honestly didn't know 4 years ago what that would be like. It's been just an absolute pleasure. And for the sake of continuity and unfinished business, I want to do it again. One last thing about me, as some of you may know, I'm basically deaf. I have a hearing aid and I have a cochlear implant, and the reason I say that is they're both new in the last 10 days. I've had them for years, but these are new models, and I have a tuner on my phone, and I may be adjusting it as I learn to get used to it. I'm not texting, and I'm not like bored and doing something else, and my time is up.
And that's
Thank you,
done.
Julie.
Fortunately, this is not a classroom. You can use your cell phone. Risa Jenkins, 1 minute.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Risa Jenkins, and I'm running for re-election to the Chapel Carver City School Board. I am a North Carolinian, born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I have 3 kids who are in the district. They are all at Chapel Hill High, a 9th grader, an 11th grader, and a 12th grader. I may be texting during this forum because I have to coordinate 2 of them for dance this evening, and I completely forgot. So hopefully they will make it home and make it to dance. I am running for re-election because, like George, there's still work to do. 4 years may seem like a long time. It felt like a long time when I decided to run. But it goes by quite quickly because we have a lot of work to do. I want to say thank you to the community members for supporting the $300 million school facility bond. I want to be able to see these schools built, and so that's why I want to stay on the school board, along with some of our important work around our fiscal strategy and some of our programs that we need to address. So thank you.
Melinda Manning.
Okay, so I'm the newcomer, obviously. I have one son who just graduated from Carver High this past June, and so I've kind of seen at least one child go through the system. He got a fantastic education, but part of the reason I'm running, I want to make sure that all of our kids get a fantastic education. I got very involved at Carver High last year because we had some problems, and basically finally decided that it was time to stop complaining and start doing. And so a number of people asked me to run. I decided, why not? I'm an empty nester, and I'm really excited. I think the part I'm really excited about is getting to go out and talk to a lot of folks about what are their concerns, what are their hopes and dreams for the district. I'm going to echo what Risa said. We have a lot of challenges ahead, but I think we can work through them together. But that's the key word. We've got to work through them together. You didn't even have to red part.
She will eventually.
I'm sure.
Okay, we'll get to the lightning round questions later, but until we do, all of the questions that I'll ask from here until then, you'll have 2 minutes each to respond, and we'll start with this one. And we'll start with Risa Jenkins and then go to Melinda Manning and George Griffin for this one. First long response question, can you provide specific strategies as to how you will align spending with district goals and address the budget deficit and ensure we prioritize attracting and retaining quality teachers? 2 minutes on this one, Risa Jenkins.
Oh boy, this is a long one, right? So I think this is some of the work that I feel like we have started in the district. So I currently chair the Finance, Facilities, and Operations Committee, and I've served on the Student Success Committee, which was the newest committee that we started when George and I actually joined the board. And so one thing that I was really interested in was making sure that we have programs that are meeting the goals and the needs of our students. A lot of questions that I ask have to do around with when our students graduate from our district, what does it look like for them? Are they prepared for whatever kind of life, career, obstacle that they need to encounter? And I felt like the answer wasn't always yes for a lot of our students. I felt like we were typically trying to get all of our students to fit in one type of mold. And that hadn't been working when we looked at some of our graduation data, when we looked at where our students ended up. And so that really kind of challenged me to think about, okay, we need to look at our programs. And so that's one thing that we as a board are working on is the academic return on investment. I'm probably getting all the acronyms wrong and all the letters, but generally just looking at our programs and assessing them, not just from a financial standpoint, but what type of outcome are we looking for students? Also been really focused on our finances. It's really hard, it's tough to make tough decisions. I know many of the community members know we did a RIF. That was probably one of the hardest things that to do as a board member, especially when you support and you know so many staff across the district. But unfortunately, we have seen a decline in our enrollment like many districts across the country. It's not unique to us. It's the reality that we're in. And so you have to make tough decisions. And so I think really what I would like to do is continue those discussions on how we can figure out a 2, 5, 10-year plan in terms of our finances and our programs so they meet our student needs. Thank you.
Acronym check. RIF is?
Reduction in force.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Melinda Manning.
Okay. So this one's probably a little bit harder for me as a newcomer, probably not as familiar with the budget as these folks. But I guess a couple things is I really agree with, I think we need to look at every single program we do to see if we're getting that return on investment. And that may be challenging because I know there's some programs that are very popular, have been really entrenched in the community, but we may find they're not really giving us as a district what they should be anymore. They may have served one purpose back in the day, but they don't anymore, and they may simply be too expensive to maintain. We're gonna have to make hard decisions, and we're probably gonna get yelled at a lot for that. But I think as long as we're open and honest, I think as long as we are going through every single aspect of the budget line by line if need be, and looking at are we spending the money that we need to be, I do think that making sure that we are taking care of our teachers should be a top priority. Because the thing is, when we have quality teachers, that helps all of our students, we know that. And the thing is, we have teachers that are getting poached from other places. You know, some of them are going to charter schools, some are going to private schools, and that. So we need to make sure that we are doing all we can to keep all the quite frankly, very brilliant teachers that we have in this district. So to me, that's really got to be one of our very top priorities. But I think at this point, really nothing is sacred. We really need to look at everything because our budget's probably not going to get better. It's probably going to get worse. And I think we've got to really live with that, and also really communicate to the greater community about that reality that we're not going to grow a money tree. It's just not going to happen, and so that's why we're going to continue to really think about probably even more hard cuts like y'all did last year.
George Griffin.
So in 2019-20, when COVID came, we hit our all-time high enrollment, 12,300 plus students. And when COVID ended and we came back to school, 500 students did not return in the first year. And in the second year, 300 students did not return. So we dropped 800 students in 2 years. And the last couple of years, it's been like 40, 60 a year, etc. Our enrollment is declining. That's a given, and that's what our budget's built on. The RIF, the reduction in force that's been mentioned, and the budget trimming we did brought us down about enough for 600, 800 kids. But we're down more than that. And we are, the way I see it is with a declining budget, declining enrollment, we're going to have to take more action in the next couple of years. We're going to need to close an elementary school or two in the next 2 to 4 years. And we've been talking about it, and we need to bring that to the community, and we will. It won't be something that we'll just have a board meeting and announce it or anything like that. These are serious issues. As far as the budget deficit, there is really no deficit right now. The plan that we put in place has us financially solid this year, and we're expecting a surplus for next year of $2 to $4 million as we slowly build the budget back. But the clinker is our enrollment numbers are lower than we thought. And so that $2 to $4 million surplus is going to get nibbled at more quickly than we think. Not minimizing our budget situation, but I hear lots of things that are just sometimes overstated. The action did work. We're going to need to get out in the community. We're going to have to do something different. Otherwise, we're just going to be here for the next 4 years, every year having our enrollment's down, our money's down, and people in Raleigh and in Washington hate us for some reason. So
That's time.
Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Melinda Manning first, and then George Griffin and Reza Jenkins, also 2 minutes on this one. As you know, the district moved to high school block scheduling this year. How do you think the school system should be evaluating whether it was successful, and what, if any, modifications do you think should be made to it? One issue that has come up is student athletes missing the same last period for sporting events. How would you address that? 2 minutes, Melinda Manning first.
So this is actually an issue that I've probably been getting the most comments and questions about as I've been out talking to folks. It certainly is one that's on a lot of people's minds with that. So I think we do certainly need to, I think we need to evaluate it beginning at the end of this coming school year. I think there's a number of things we need to look at. We need to certainly continue to look at graduation rates. We need to look at EOGs. Are students passing EOGs? Are they failing other classes? But we also need to survey the teachers. What do the teachers think about it? Do the teachers feel like it's an effective system? We need to survey the students. We need to survey the parents. This student athlete issue is one. My son was a 3-sport student athlete. He would have missed a lot of class, certainly with that. However, the reality is he actually did some because he was on the Carborough system, which already did have kind of double periods with that. So I think we really need to, again, to take a good hard look at it to make sure it is actually working. It's actually achieving the goals, because I know the board really thought that the new block scheduling would achieve certain goals, and I think we need to make sure it is matching up with those goals that they set for it as well. We also need to recognize that it may take, I know there was a rather short implementation period in order to get to the block scheduling, and so there may have been some rough things in this first year of it, and we probably also need to really look at that. Do we think those rough points are going to improve in another year or not? Can I say a yellow card? I'm really trying hard not to get a red card, so I'll stop there.
George Griffin.
Thank you. I'm a real fan of the block schedule. I was a high school principal once and have been on all kinds of different schedules and totally support the idea. I want to get to the modifications first. The administration went to a 4x4 block this year and tried to keep it pretty pure without making lots of adjustments so that we didn't end up with something we couldn't even describe. But the promise and the potential there is after we get a year under our belt, then we can start looking at, do we need more year-long classes that run 45 minutes each? Do we need to pair some classes together? There were lots of requests to do that. And that's the beauty in the block is you can have a 4x4 block schedule, which is kids take 4 classes at a time in the first semester and then 4 in the second semester. We're talking about using acronyms, but so we can lay in lots of other things on top of that. And I think there's lots of potential there so that a year or two from now, that block schedule is going to have lots of variations in it. Not right now. Now, as far as evaluating the effectiveness of it, Diane Vilwalk, who's our research person, she has put together a proposal to do a 3-year evaluation of the block schedule and listed 8 or 9 incredibly significant criteria that we actually have data for. They're not promises, they're like, it would encompass looking at performance of students, it would encompass how many kids are getting classes they want, what's our graduation rates look like. If anybody wants it, email me and I'll go dig up the PowerPoint she put up there because I was like, whoa, that's a lot to evaluate. But there is a plan out there. So I think we just, the sports one. I have no answer for that except do like Wake County and start high school at 7:30 and they get out at 3 o'clock.
And that's time. Risa Jenkins.
No, everybody's like, no.
Well, I think as part of the move to the high school block schedule, we had asked, I know I as a board member had asked for evaluation. That was one of my biggest concerns as a board member is we, the district, would put things in place and then never go back and evaluate it. We would put in a new program, a new thing, and then never go back and survey the students, the staff, to say, did it actually work? So that was one thing that I insisted on, that we make sure we survey, we look at all of our subgroups to make sure we're seeing how it's impacting all of our students. So that's something I really focus on. But I'm really focused also on like staff. We have been hearing quite a bit of concerns from our staff about this shift to from a 45-minute to an 80-minute schedule. And many of our staff, I mean a good number of our staff have taught on a block system, but we still had some who had not. And so I want to make sure we're clear that if staff feel like they still need additional support, even though there's professional development or PD throughout the year, there's on-demand PD or professional development available for them, we make sure they get the tools they need, because if the adults who are teaching our students don't feel like they have the tools they need, then that's not going to go great for the implementation. So I think evaluation definitely. I'm open to hearing any modifications from the staff. Ultimately, I mean, we voted as a board to go to block, but really it's on the staff and the administration to come to us and say, hey, we're going to make this adjustment or that adjustment. We think this might be better for students. That also might address some of the stuff for student athletes. I have some thoughts on things that we could do. Because the kids are having 8 classes versus 7, that opens up the opportunity for study hall. I know some people might not like it, but as somebody who had a study hall in high school, it's really great. It's just a time I got caught up on classwork, and so we might want to think about utilizing that as, you know, an option, especially for our athletes during their seasons. So, thank you.
Next question, also 2 minutes per candidate, and we'll start with George Griffin and then go to Risa Jenkins and Melinda Manning. Please describe your philosophy for school safety. What specific strategies would you implement to ensure that students are safe and feel supported, both physically and emotionally? George Griffin, first 2 minutes.
Thank you. Safety is absolutely the number one thing that has to happen and be in place for any student to feel secure enough to learn. I've said this for 50 years. If the facility, the environment where students are, classroom, schools, if kids and teachers don't feel safe and they're worried about some kind of safety, and safety could be physical, that's what we think about, but it's also emotional and mental, then you can't learn when you're distracted. So we have spent a lot of energy, money, and support. When I say we, I mean the administration with the school board and the community support in making our schools just as safe as I think we reasonably can. You walk in our schools, they're clean. They're old, some of them, but they're clean and they're neat. And there's lots of security, but it's more than that. It's a sort of an awareness. It's a culture where everybody in the school has to kind of be on board with doing their part to help kids feel safe in the school. I could go on for this all night, but I would just be repeating myself. If you don't have safe schools, the rest doesn't matter.
Risa Jenkins.
So as a district, we've already spent quite a bit of money on physical safety, from updating security systems and how we check in, improving fences, and all of those things as best we can, especially with our aging schools, adding vestibules. I think the emotional safety piece, that's where we have some ongoing work to do. The county was gracious enough to allocate additional funding to us, which we chose to use as they directed us for mental health specialists. So I think that addresses at least one part of that social emotional safety for kids. But I think another aspect is making sure our students feel like they are welcomed and they are safe. And that is an uphill battle in this district. I can tell you as a mother of 3 children in this district, as much as we say we are welcoming, we don't always present as though we're welcoming. So I think it goes beyond just some of the investment, but also we have to look at our culture of our schools, how we're treating our students and our staff, to make sure everyone truly feels welcome and they feel seen. And that's really a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work for us as a district and as a community to really make sure we're doing that. I think we do a lot of lip service about that, but I think we have to continually do that work, because if children don't feel like they are seen, they don't want to be at school. They are not going to want to show up. they are not going to want to participate. I can tell you, I've dealt with that with my own children and them not wanting to go to school because of things that have been said to them. And so I think we have some work to do. And so, but again, we're invested in it. We're looking at our curriculum and things like that. But then also we just need to make sure we have staff that align with our community and making sure that kids see themselves in every aspect of the classroom. Because I think that's that missing piece a lot of times in schools that I find, so.
Melinda Manning.
Okay, I certainly agree with all the things my, I guess, future colleagues have said with that. So there's two things in particular I really kind of want to hone in on. They're maybe a little bit different. I think one thing we need to start planning for the reality that we may have immigration rates in some of our schools, and we need to get ready for that because all of our students deserve to feel safe, no matter what their documentation status. So that's just one area I think we need to be thinking about because I think it's definitely a reality. We need to be prepared for that. Second thing, I certainly, as someone who's actually trained as a therapist, I certainly do think a lot about kind of the mental health, the mental well-being of our students. What can we do to enhance that? Because I agree, certainly if you're not feeling psychologically safe, you can't learn with that. So another area I think we would need to think about is improving our responses to when students report harassment or bullying with that, because it seems that maybe the response is better at some schools than others. So I think we need to kind of probably look at those policies again, but also look at how are we training the administrators who are responsible for implementing those policies. How are we letting families and students know what are the avenues for reporting, making sure that everyone is clear that if something happens, they know where to go. They know how the process works. Again, I wish we had lots and lots of money and we could hire even more mental health specialists. It's probably not going to happen. So I think we need to really make sure we're connecting with our community mental health resources so that kids that maybe need kind of longer term, more term help, that we can kind of create pathways for them to get the help that they might need.
All right, next question, 2 minutes again per candidate. We'll start with Risa Jenkins and then go to Melinda Manning and George Griffin. Quick question, what are your plans to address Chapel-Carver City Schools' racial and economic gaps in reading and math? 2 minutes, Risa Jenkins first.
So I think we're starting to see some wonderful data about some programs that we've invested in the district. There's been some, for our Title I funding, we've used that money towards the Ignite tutoring program, and that's at the elementary school. And one of the schools that I'm the liaison for, Erasmus, I've had a chance to see the program in action, so watch the kids when they were getting their tutoring services, and then also talk with the principal at Erasmus about the data. So I'm hearing there's promising data from that additional tutoring that students are getting, because not only do we have the gaps just historically, but then you layer on COVID and how it's just impacted a lot of children who were school aged. So I think that's some promising information. We also started some tutoring programs and making tutoring available at the high school, although I don't think it was as intentional as it was with the elementary school program. So more to come on that program, but I really think there has to be additional investment, more intensive investment with tutoring for students, especially when we have such severe gaps. We've started looking at data a little bit differently. One question that I pressed, we heard Dr. Griffin talk about Diane Billwalk, she heads up the team that looks at our student data, but we're starting to look at data differently, whereas we would look at data from third grade to third grade, which isn't a great way to compare data. Now we're looking at data via cohorts. So that's really, it's actually helping us track a group of students as they move through our district to see, are the things that we're doing from one grade to a next, not just at one grade level, is that working for them? Because sometimes some of those test points are only at certain grades, and the work that we have to do is every single year. And so that's also a way that we're trying to address it, is looking at data differently.
Melinda Manning.
I've also been hearing about the Ignite tutoring program, and I think that's something that we need to do everything we can to continue it, because I think as we all know, that really we need to start addressing these gaps at the elementary level. as early as possible, and also particularly really to get kids really invested in school and to really enjoy school. Because when we enjoy school, we tend to learn more. We know that with that. So I think the other thing is, you know, I know we're not the only district that struggles with this issue, and also again with the COVID piece laid onto it, but I think we need to start looking at what other school districts are doing, because I'm guessing if we start looking around the country, we may be able to gain some ideas from what some other school districts are doing. There might be some others that are. I actually read a really fascinating article that of all states, Mississippi's actually made huge gains in reading scores. You know, not a place we think to look, but I think we need to look as many places as we can to see, are there ideas that we might be able to implement here as much as possible. But I think there's little programs also that we can insert here and there. There was a program that was at Carver High last year where some teachers got a grant where they could provide college essay help. Because we know that a lot of our students from wealthy families hire private college consultants. We also know that a lot of our students can't do that. And so what these teachers were doing with this grant money is they were kind of almost helping students write those college essays so that they could, you know, apply to whatever schools they wanted to and hopefully be successful in that. There's small initiatives like that that I think we also need to look more closely at.
George Griffin.
Thank you. One of the things Dr. Hamlet did, and she did a lot here when she was here, was address equity issues and deficiencies in the district in a very deliberate manner. And she talked, and Risa alluded to it, a lot about individual student growth and put in place tracking students one by one. So it's not much proficiency, did they get a score on the test, as is there evidence throughout the year, every nine weeks, that individual student's actually gaining in reading or math abilities. And she was proud to always remind us that while some of the test scores aren't showing up, the kids are progressing month for month and year for year. And that's what's important, because by the time we're dealing with them, they're already several years behind their grade level peers. She also was an advocate of other aspects of making kids who struggle feel valued in school. She's a big supporter of our Blue Ribbon Mentor program, and her Equity and Empathy Ambassadors program. There's lots of things where kids then become connected to school and they want to do well, and it increases motivation. So it's not just let's get a reading program and we can address some of the learning problems kids are having. I give her, my hat is off to her for that kind of work. And she also, Dr. Hamlet would point out frequently that almost all these kids that were struggling were also identified in other categories as having difficulties. They were in exceptional children's programs, or they were in a particular socioeconomic group. And so it was like they weren't out there just isolated kids who were having reading difficulties. They were having lots of struggles and everything. Thank you.
That's time. All right, next question, and we will start on this one with Melinda Manning and then go to George Griffin and Ariza Jenkins, 2 minutes each. With budget constraints, how do you plan to support enrichment programs and improve accessibility of those offerings? 2 minutes, Melinda Manning first.
You had to give this one to me first.
Yes.
This is one, again, our budget's probably not going to grow. And so, but there are certainly a lot of enrichment programs that we know are incredibly valuable. So one idea I've had, and I know some other school districts successfully done this, is that I think we need to tap into our community. A lot of individual high schools in particular are already kind of fundraising for their athletic programs. Why can't we do that for other programs? Why are we only fundraising for athletics? What does that say about our priorities as a community? We know there's a lot of money in this community. Let's be realistic about that. So that's one thing I've really thought about with that. Again, I think it also goes back to we need to look at every single enrichment program and see, is it worth it? Are we really getting that return on investment? There may be some that are, and we need to do everything we can to get the money to keep those going. But there may be others that look flashy and look good and really are not We're not really not getting that return on investment with that as much as possible. Again, certainly, of course, we need to be making our case every year to the County Board of Commissioners to really try to get budget increases where we can. I think we really also, particularly, we need to maybe showcase some of these programs that are doing really well and show why we might need extra funding for some of these. Because I know some of these programs are incredibly impressive and do really show great gains for our students. But again, there's no guarantee with that. So we're probably going to have to get really creative.
George Griffin.
It's not so much an answer to the question as just a shout out to the Public School Foundation. The foundation supports all sorts of special enrichment programs, teacher initiatives, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. And so this isn't like the answer to the question as much as just pat on the back to the PSF for the work they do that's been going on for 35 years here in the district, and it's tireless effort. So thank you on that one. And I would agree with Melinda, the return on investment, we need to, and we plan to take a look at which of our programs are really giving us the results we think they are, and which ones need to be modified or enhanced, which ones need to be increased. The people hear us talk about evaluating programs and they immediately think, oh, you're going to get rid of something. Well, no, it could be that we also discover something's really working and we want to expand it. So it's both sides of that. This is a tough question because these are the kind of, this is what we're going to do for the next couple of years is take our budget and say, whoa, we've got less than we've ever had before because of increased costs. So how are we going to spend it? I don't have any magic solutions right now.
Risa Jenkins.
So I think sometimes when we think budget constraint, we immediately think, okay, we're going to start cutting everything. And I think we probably should start looking at things differently. Yeah, we may have to cut some things, but we may have to think about, do we offer a particular program at this grade level versus this? So maybe we're offering a particular program running from K to 12. And we're looking at it and we're saying, well, maybe a student will appreciate it more if we just do it in high school, right? And offer it there. Or maybe we do it this way or a different way. So I think that's one way we can look at, hopefully, one, maintaining some of the programs that we see are working for students, but then also being a little, sensible about our budget and knowing that we've got a constraint. Because obviously if you're running a particular enrichment program across all grades, that's more expensive than if you focus it on high school, especially on a block schedule where you can deepen the study or the program. I agree with George, we've got Public School Foundation and things like that, but I really just think we should look at how we offer programs and what we do. Also with our decreasing student enrollment, we've got to think, we had some of these programs at the height of our enrollment. And so there may be some programs that we just continue to do and we keep doing, and when we look at it, we went from hundreds of kids, now we're down to maybe 10, 15 kids, and we've had to be creative to keep a program going on. So I think it's going to be tough. We're going to have those conversations, and maybe some of those programs go away in their full form, but my kids just participated in Club Week or Club Day, whatever it was, and so some of those programs and activities can come back as a club, so kids who might have an interest in something, they can do it that way in high school and still get to participate in it. So those are some of the creative ways to think about things as well.
All right, next question. 2 minutes again per candidate, and we'll start with George Griffin and then go to Risa Jenkins and Melinda Manning. What role do you see technology playing within the classroom curriculum? Do you think there should be limits on technology use and more time spent using paper, pencil, and books? George Griffin first.
Thank you. On the back table over there, there's little handouts over on the end there. And we each have our materials over there. Take one on the way out if you want. And it mentions some of the issues. One of the issues I put down that we need to address is the whole area of educational technology and what that means. And we're actually going to be doing that. If Dr. Trice is going to, on October 2nd this week, lay out his first take at what we need to do to evaluate the effectiveness of our use of technology from the get-go. Bottom line is this. We know our mission is to teach kids to think critically, to use critical skills, to be able to analyze and synthesize and create and evaluate. And if our kids don't get that skill when they leave us as seniors, we have failed them. In order to make it in this world today, you've got to know what's real and what's fake. You've got to be able to tell who's doing you and who's playing you and who's not. And there is so much out there. I mean, adults, we don't do so well ourselves, and we're struggling with it. But imagine if you haven't even developed those skills. So technology cannot teach those skills. Technology is a means to use those skills. But so we haven't done that yet. We've bought the technology, we bought the hardware, we've got the rules, but we're not there yet, period. And then artificial intelligence. We have to do questionnaires when you run for office for local media. And I'm not going to name the newspaper over in Durham, INDY, that I had AI write it for me first just to see. They would ask questions and I would just put it in and say, tell me what the answer is. Here's a couple of variables. And then I just trashed the whole thing and answered them myself and sent it. It's amazing. It's striking. We got a lot of work to do.
That's time. Acronym check. Is INDY short for something by any chance? Risa Jenkins, 2 minutes.
Oh boy. What role do I see technology playing in the curriculum? It depends, right? When I would tutor my kids in math, they'd have their computer and they'd have to do it on this computer thing. And I'd say, no, give me a piece of paper and a pencil. Right? That's how I learned how to do math. And so I think it just really depends. But I will say, as a person who works in a STEM field, so I work in renewable energy, we use technology a lot. We go through hundreds and thousands of lines of data. I can generally look at a lot of data and quickly synthesize it pretty fast, just because I look at it all the time. And I really think it just really depends on the class, on what our goal is. I will say, as somebody who's out in the workforce, our students do not know how to use technology in the workforce. They have the phones, they've had them since they were whatever age, and they don't know how to use technology in the workforce. So that's the gap that like George was talking about. We've given them the hardware. Now we need to give them the tools to use it so they can be successful in the workforce. And they learn how to do little things like how to do PowerPoints and things like that. But there's a lot more sophisticated things out in the industry that the students aren't learning. And so really connecting what the workforce needs and what our students, the skills they have, that needs to align. So I think that's where I think our technology use really needs to focus as somebody who's hiring these young people. Yeah, I think there should be limits. I fight that battle every day with my kids. But I really think we should be focusing on how kids are learning to use technology, learning how to use the software and tools. We can't fight AI. That's a discussion we're having in the corporate spaces too. How do we use it responsibly? We've got a lot of issues with people trying to breach our data, so we have to be careful about who gets access using it via AI, artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Actually, I wasn't going to ask about that acronym, but Melinda Manning.
You know, I think far too long we've kind of assumed that technology was kind of the magic bullet for every educational problem we had. And I think we're starting to realize that there's some limits to that maybe sometimes too much technology in a classroom is actually a problem. I think particularly discussions I've had with my son, and he's come to realize what a lot of research already tells us, sometimes we remember more when we write it down as opposed to when we type it, right? So there's a time, and again, echo what y'all have said, there's a time and a place for technology, but I don't think we should be, using it in the classroom all the time. There is a time and a place for pencil and paper as well, and really think about that. I also agree that we need to make sure that our kids do know what's real and what's fake as much as possible. They need some literacy in terms of, media literacy. I'm not really sure what you call it at this point. but to really kind of understand, to really find what the real sources are and what the fake sources are. They really need some training on that. We also need to get our hands around AI. Also, when I was doing a certain questionnaire with a certain Durham newspaper, I started doing some deep dive, and one of the things I found is that there's some other states that are way ahead of us on this. The state of Maine actually has some beautiful resources that, you know, maybe we should be looking at on how to really kind of help students use it responsibly in the classroom. Also, it's also something we need to work with our teachers. Our teachers may be able to use AI to make parts of their job easier. And so we also need to do what we can to provide them with some training, because we all know they have a million things to do and not enough time to do it. Are there ways that they can automate some of their tasks? And again, in a responsible fashion.
I also appreciate the question about technology with the giant PowerPoints. Next question, this will be our last long form question, still 2 minutes each, and we'll start with Risa Jenkins and then Melinda Manning and George Griffin. Given escalating political tensions in our school community, do you think there's a need for stronger policies related to harassment and discrimination? Sub-questions, what policies have been effective, how might they be improved, and what programs might be implemented to ensure our diverse student body is celebrated? Risa Jenkins, 2 minutes first.
Boy, this is a tough one. If policy could fix things, and I'm going to borrow from Dr. Griffin because he says this, if policies could fix things, then we'd write a gazillion policies and everything would be fixed. So policy isn't going to fix it. But, I mean, we do have policies on bullying and things like that, and I think they're great parameters. But I think it really just comes down to the culture of our community, the culture of our schools, and when things do come up, making sure we address it quickly and swiftly, and then also equitably across any type of harassment. I think sometimes some harassment gets more light and shine than other harassment. I can tell you just the things that I see and hear from the community, like my kids who are Black students in the district, the harassment and things that have been done to them don't get the attention on social media and groups wanting to protest and meet with the superintendent. You know, things have been done and said to my own children, and I dealt with the assistant principal, because if I wanted to have a march or whatever, every time something was done to one of my kids, I wouldn't be on the school board, I'd be marching up and down the street. So, yeah, so I think that's the one thing we always have to keep in mind, is that there's a lot of harassment that's going on with a lot of kids in our schools. So we could put policies in place, but it starts at home first and foremost. I remember saying that to an assistant principal, that kid didn't learn it from school, I hope. It started at home. So we have to have honest conversations in the community and stop trying to push everything down onto the schools to address home issues with us. So I think that's the first thing, but then also when we're thinking about programs, we need to continue the ongoing work about making sure every single one of our community members sees themselves in the school building, in the curriculum, in the way we work, the way we think in our schools. So I think that's just really the most we can do, is continue that work.
Melinda Manning.
When I worked at the university, one of the roles I did was I actually worked with students who had experienced some form of discrimination, harassment, or violence. And one of the things I could tell you is that policies can only do so much. You have to have the right people implementing those policies. And so part of this is that, again, certainly we should look at our policies, but we also need to look at how are we training the administrators who are responsible for carrying out those policies? Do they know how to do a good investigation? Again, do we have the best pathways for students and families to report areas of concern with that? We are certainly not a perfect community. We know that there's a lot of things that is happening in our schools, all the time. I think there's other little things we could put in. Again, we know that the political tensions are probably going to get worse instead of getting better. So are we training, say, our high school teachers on how to have conversations in the classroom? Because you can't totally escape some of these conversations, particularly at the high school level. We might look at some kind of community-based programs like the Braver Angels program that actually will train teachers on how to kind of manage these types of conversations, because we know that these kind of flashpoints can come in all kinds of places. I absolutely agree. We need to continue to look at our schools, making sure that all of our students can see themselves. I have a mixed race son, And it was really great that throughout his years here, he was able to see things that looked like him. And I think it certainly did a lot for how he felt welcomed in the schools. I guess in conclusion, this is something we're going to need the help of the whole community. If we're going to be successful in this, we can't just do it ourselves. We're really going to need help from families, help from other members in the community to kind of step up so that we can, again, continue to make our schools as psychologically safe as possible for all of our students.
George Griffin.
2 years ago, the General Assembly passed the so-called Parents' Rights Bill. And it had 12 things in it that schools were supposed to write into their policy. And we got down to the nitty-gritty on it as a school board. And there were 2 of those 12 items that we determined were just blatantly discriminatory. There wasn't any sense of it or anything. And after some prolonged discussion, the board voted to just tell the General Assembly, no thanks, we're not doing this. It was risky, it was out there, but we're trying to make a statement as well as protect our kids and our families. And for us to sit there and try and wordsmith a policy that somehow legitimized discrimination just seemed ludicrous to us. And we said no, and we're the only school district in North Carolina of 115 school districts that stood up to the General Assembly and said, we're not doing this. We're not signing this. We're not going to do it. Everybody told us that we were making a mistake, and well, not everybody, but some people did. And it was a challenging time, but I think that's where we are today, is if we're being asked to do something that's discriminatory, we need to just say no. I'm real clear about my values. I'm not always clear about how to operationalize them sometimes. So I don't think the answer is in policy as much as in our hearts, but doing the right thing and not being afraid that somebody's going to be on our case if we stand up for our kids. Now, we are a much more diverse school system than we are a community, which is interesting. If you look at our racial makeup, it's around, and my time is up. I swear, your second 30 seconds is faster than your first minute.
That is what they all say.
I'll stop talking. You saved me. Thanks, Julie.
All right, that concludes the long response questions. So we're moving ahead to the lightning round. Can confirm that Melinda Manning has gone the entire form without getting the red card, but it gets harder now. So
I mean, yeah.
everyone's going to have 30 seconds to answer these next couple of questions, and we'll start with Melinda Manning and then go to George Griffin and then Risa Jenkins. 30 seconds on this one. Given limited financial resources and a significant decrease in student enrollment, do you believe we should consider school closures? 30 seconds, Melinda Manning.
Yes. I could just leave it at that. But again, I think as I said earlier, I think we need to look at everything. And it's going to make some people unhappy. We know that. But I think as long as we certainly lay out our reasons for doing it, why we think closing a school is best for the financial health of the entire district. We may still have some angry people even then, but I think this certainly will help kind of maybe help people understand why this is necessary.
George Griffin.
Jim.
So yeah, I've already said yes. We should close 1, maybe 2 elementary schools just for space and finance reasons. But we also need to educate the public that we have this bond plan, and we're building 3 replacement schools. And those 2 topics are running parallel, but they're not the same. So we're not like creating new schools while we're closing schools. We're actually replacing old buildings with the bond. But we still have a surplus of elementary seats.
Risa Jenkins.
Yes, it's going to be a hard, tough discussion. I know our schools are embedded in our communities, but we have a responsibility to the community to be fiscally responsible, but also we have a responsibility to our students and staff to make sure that we think about how we're operating our district responsibly. So the sooner we can start having these discussions with the community, the better, so that it won't be any surprises, it won't be any shock. We have time to prepare, both from a family perspective for family members and a staff perspective.
Next lightning round question, and this will be our last question before closing statements. We'll start with George Griffin, and then we'll go to Risa Jenkins and Melinda Manning. Why are final exams given up to 2.5 weeks before school ends? Often students are encouraged not to attend school after their final exams. Can you share how you might address this as a school board member? 30 seconds, George Griffin starts.
Well, I suspect there were references to the advanced placement exams. And that schedule is determined by the college board, not by us. And so they set the weeks for the schedule and they do the testing. We do the testing and the whole class is involved, and then there's a couple weeks of, well, it's downtime. It's a waste of time. It needs to be changed. We haven't been successful. And no school district has in getting these kind of things. The block schedule is actually going to help with that because it has shortened the time frame.
Risa Jenkins.
Oh, boy. Well, I'm sorry. I'm about to go through all this with all 3 kids. I had the pleasure of it for 2 of them. And I would say, to piggyback on what Dr. Griffin is saying, yes, a lot of it has to do with the AP exams. A significant number of our kids in our district take AP exams. I think there's some creative ways that we can address getting kids to school those last 2 weeks. There's some things I know that happen around the 2 weeks, and we could probably move them, but that's really going to rest with the schools, because I know there's some traditional things for the seniors and stuff, so we may need to think about it from the school level, not the board.
Melinda Manning.
Yes, I just had this fight last year with my son. So a couple things. I think we need to is there a way we could create some meaningful learning opportunities for those students, again, so they will want to come to school. There's additional challenges, though. I know sometimes because there's so much testing going on, there's not enough classrooms to actually physically hold the kids in. There's reasons like that why some of the teachers just said, don't come, because we literally don't have classes for you. So I think we need to really, again, help schools kind of work some of those issues out.
I read Catch-22 in the 3 weeks after my AP English exam. Still my favorite book ever. All right, we have reached the final portion of tonight's program. Every candidate's going to have 1 minute to make a closing statement and use your minute to share why voters should select you in this upcoming election. We'll start with Risa Jenkins and then Melinda Manning and wrap up with George Griffin. 60 seconds.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It's really great to see a large crowd this evening, and also for anyone who watches this later or is watching now live. One thing I want to say is first, thank you for supporting me over the 4 years. For those of you who supported me then, I hope you will support me over these next 4 years. I really want to make sure that we continue the focus on our fiscal strategy. I know Dr. Griffin alluded to it, but it's something I've been saying. We need to have a strategy about our finances. Also, I really want us to focus on our programs. We really need to make sure that we are aligning our programs with what our student needs and what how our students are graduating out of our district. Also, just want to make a plug. School board races are so important. The work that we do is critical. It is setting the foundation for the community. Also, in this off-cycle year, we need to get people out voting this year in preparation for the next couple of years, because what happens in the state legislature and the federal government has a huge impact on us in the school board, in the school districts. So thank you.
Melinda Manning.
Again, I want to say thank you for everybody coming out on this very dark and dreary and rainy night. It really means a lot. I'm sure all of you had better things you could have done with your nights than this. But again, I want to echo, even though there really isn't much of a choice this year in this particular election, please come out and vote. It is incredibly important. And please certainly encourage our young people to come out and vote, because we need to get them kind of in the practice of voting. I'm the newcomer to this. I think one of the things I really bring to this is that I was part of the experience at Carver last year where we didn't feel heard. And so one of the things I really pledged to do for those who contact us with concerns is to make sure people are heard. We may not always agree, we may not always be able to give what people are asking for, but we need to work harder at making sure people are actually heard when they come forward with concerns. And that's one thing I know that I can do well in everything. Thank you in advance for your support and your support over the next 4 years.
You got a red card. And all the way to the end. George Griffin, last point.
In my time In my time on the board, I've served as vice chair for a year and chair for 2 years, and that's been the biggest honor of my career. We've put in place school safety protocols. The administration developed a curriculum instruction management plan. We have a 10-year capital investment plan. We developed a strategic plan. We raised teacher salary supplements. We raised classified staff supplements and restructured their pay scale. We got a successful bond plan passed. That's a lot. Right now, I want to see us continue to implement the curriculum plan. We want to make sure it doesn't matter what school you're in, what grade you're in, or who your teacher is, you get the same quality curriculum, and that's a first for here. I want us to get into academic return on investment in a deliberate way. I want us to develop a 5-year budget plan instead of 1 year at a time. I'm committed to a thorough review of educational technology and what that means and how we're going to use it. And I want to see a successful implementation of our bond plan. Thank you.
And that concludes our forum. Please join me in giving the candidates a round of applause to thank them for being here tonight, for being out on the campaign trail, and for volunteering their time and energy and efforts for the next 4 years. Thanks also to all of the sponsors who made this forum possible, and thanks to all of you for being here in the room today and also listening and watching on our live stream. We also want to let everyone know the state superintendent, Mo Green, is going to be doing a statewide tour, tour as a rollout of the new strategic plan for public education in North Carolina. He's going to be at Chapel Hill High School on Wednesday, October 29th at 6 p.m. Everyone's invited to that, so mark your calendars. I want to say good evening to all of our attendees on the live stream. If you're here in the room, stick around and ask the candidates any additional questions you may have. Again, thanks to all of the sponsors and all of the organizations and the candidates for making tonight possible. Make sure to get out and vote. Early voting is going to be here before you know it, and Election Day is a little bit more than a month away. Thanks for having me as your moderator, and have a lovely evening. Good night.